What are some of the approaches you're using for managing the accrual of technical debt? Open discussion, we got
Refactoring.
refactoring.
Taking time out at a certain time, like once, a certain amount of time during the week or a certain time even during the month to allow your team to refactor, to start creating unit testing.
So we give them time. So is that to stop the accrual of new debt, or is that to service the debt you already have?
So that's actually to stop the bleeding.
Stop the bleeding, okay? So we heard two around refactoring, please.
Partial rewrite as a standalone service.
So partial rewrite is a standalone service
And-
for,
And we're not going back and choosing random parts of our old debt. What we're doing is, okay, we need to do some new work. We could do new work in this area where we have all this technical debt. What we're instead going to do is draw a piece around that and say, okay, we're going to rewrite that piece. Out here's a standalone service. The old system calls into it, and
Okay.
we avoid doing too much touching in the area that we screwed up before.
so carve out a piece, make that a standalone service so we can isolate some of the debt.
What I've also recommended at times is to parallel those where you start creating, take what you have, examine it, and start creating the correct amount of code, not to be used yet,
Mhm.
but until you get to a point where you can plug it in, but you start doing a parallel path to do
Build
it
in
right.
parallel, and then when appropriate, swap over to the
Yes.
other track with the new
Correct.
functionality. Okay, please.
So it's in my sense, what we wrote is basically we have two types of definition. One is the readiness of like you have invest
Yes.
rules
Uh-huh.
that will follow, and second is to follow the definition of done.
Ah, very nice. Okay, we'll talk about that
Both should
shortly.
have to be aligned so that we have less debt.
So have a solid definition of ready, doesn't solid definition of done. We'll discuss this in a moment. Others? And Rick's got the microphone for you. Good.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll get the mic up to you in a second. Keep the mic away from you.
We sit for 2 hours a day with the team in a circle, and we do refactoring as a team in a model.
Team refactoring, right on. It's making its way up.
sorry. One thing is every time that we work in an industry, or I work in an industry that is constant new features. So every opportunity when we engage in a new feature, we take the time and refactor around the area of the improvement so that we reduce some of the technical debt.
Right on. So I'm hearing a lot that overlap with the servicing part as well, right? We'd like to prevent putting new stuff in. It'd be nice at the same time to be able to service out, reduce the level of technical debt we have. Got time for one more if anybody has one? Others will push on. Do you have one? No? Okay. Well, let's look at some things we could do then. I've heard some good ideas. I'll add a few to that. We talked about being able to apply good technical practices. Start applying good technical practices. And maybe that involves, making sure that people actually know how to do these things. If people aren't familiar with test-driven development, then maybe they should get training in test-driven development and know how to do it. Because it's not, you can say, well, you should be doing it. It's like, I would if I knew how. Okay, so help them, please.
Just a question, but taking a step back, is, that's under the assumption that the business is willing to acknowledge it and pay for it. So one of the things I want to talk about is, that current that's underneath the radar, that all these things, every system being imperfect, has got some technical debt.
Yep.
And that you sometimes put it on an issues log or somewhere, but the business says, if that doesn't create direct value from the customer, I'm not interested.
Right on.
So I wanted,
That's
if
our
you
next
could just
topic, by
touch,
the way.
yeah, I wanted if you would touch on
Yep.
how to continue the pressure of positive visibility and having them make the decision, authorizing you to
Right.
tackle it versus you doing it on your own, and then, well, you take long to deliver what I need.
So that's going to be this one right here, making technical debt visible. Because how do you work on a problem if people don't know the problem
They don't
exists? See,
wanna know.
if you're a technical person, you know the problem exists. You got to live it every day.
To the people.
Right. So we'll come to that. That'll be our next discussion point. All right. So fine. Let's get our people on top of good core technical practices. That seems like an obvious first place to start in managing the accrual. I wonder how many of you run into this within your organization, the myth. Here's what I think is, it's sort of the myth, the reality, and the good practice. Need to go faster. You guys aren't going fast enough. If you don't go faster, we're not going to hit the date with the features that I need. Go faster. Myth? Well, testing seems like overhead. So if we reduce testing, yes, we understand we'll increase testing debt at least, but we'll go faster. Is there anybody here who buys that? Do you work with people who buy that? I mean, I run into a fair number of people who actually believe that that myth is true, that, look, we'll just reduce the testing, we'll go faster. Yeah, I understand there's some debt that comes with that, but we'll go faster, and faster is important because I gotta get this product into the market by that date. I think the reality that most of us have a deep appreciation for is reducing testing will in fact increase debt, so that part was correct, but you don't go faster, you actually go slower. I always love the idea, well, if we just did all the testing at the end, just did it once, that would save so much more time, right? Right. Let's see, let's do a valuable knowledge gaining activity at the worst possible time you could ever do it, at the end, right before I want to ship, just because when we discover things that are wrong, that's the perfect time to have to go fix them, right before we want to ship. Now it takes longer to get them fixed. There's nothing about going faster that factors into this discussion. You'll go slower. Now, good technical practices like test-driven development, TDD, or things like that, will actually help you lower debt. If for no other reason, you will have more tests there that are very appropriate to what you're trying to do, and you will go faster because you're running the tests all the time. Oh no, running tests all the time slows you down. Not if they're automated, to our point earlier. So, good practices. Thank you. Strong definition of done. Strong definition of done. A lot of teams have very weak definitions of done. A weak definition of done will likely, it's not guaranteed, but will likely introduce naive technical debt. Well, done means the coach checked in and it compiles fine. Okay? That might not be an adequate definition of calling it done at the end of the sprint. Having a bit more to that definition of done, a more profound definition of done. Yeah, compiles-ish, right? So stronger definition of done, less likely. Not a guarantee that you won't, just less likely to approve naive technical debt. So let's do that. You really do, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Previous slide, definition of done. What kind of automated tests is in scope there? A JUnit integration test or a regression test that can be moved into the regression suite?
So is your goal to release software at the end of every sprint?
Or every test?
Okay, so as a rule,
Our
right?
goal is going to be
Every sprint, right? Then yes to everything you just said.
That's a goal, but not always reality.
Understood. Your goal might be long-term, we do want to release every sprint. We're not there yet. Look, magically it doesn't happen overnight, but we're working our way towards that goal. At that point, you better have unit level testing. You better have integration testing. Oh, by the way, we have to do load testing because it's got to work with 100. I don't know. Let's see, Office Depot, how many concurrent users do you have to have? 5 million?
14,000 current users.
Okay, do you test that every sprint, right? You could say, if I'm going to go live every sprint, how can you go live every sprint if you haven't done the load testing every sprint? So honestly, you need to cast a very wide net on testing. And because that which you have not tested, are you going to have a specialized downstream testing only sprint for that? Here be dragons. You don't want to go down this path too far. Please.
Yeah, this is definition of done. But before that, we have strong definition of readiness.
Yep.
So there we ask the question, are the automated tests available for this user story? So if no, then we are increasing the technical tests. Then we
Okay.
work separately how we can make sure that testing is being done.
So the comment there implies, though, that the automated testing got written in the sprint prior to the sprint in which the stories got built. Right? That may not always be true. Right? In some cases, the companies might choose to do that. I'm a fan of the automations produced in the sprint where I'm producing the features, right? Do all the work necessary to get the thing done, which in good practice would mean automate your tests. Whether they've been automated ahead of time or not is something you have to decide. If you choose to go that route, I only offer you one word of caution. Don't get too far out ahead of yourself, because you end up injecting too much inventory into the system. Work started but not yet finished, because if you change your mind and you don't actually do those stories, because the product owner says, I was thinking that was a good idea, but now I don't want to do it, you're throwing out automated tests for something you're never going to build. Waste, right? Agile's all about minimizing waste, so don't inject inventory prematurely into your system. I don't know if that's happening here or not, but it's an observation. All right, so we'll try to have a strong definition of that. Now, let's come back to this idea of understanding sort of technical debt economics, because it gets very important. Where we said that naive technical debt is like trying to lock down all the constraints and somehow magically thinking it's going to happen, and we said naive to think that way. The other approach said, well, wait a minute though, I can make an economic argument to you for why we should take on the debt, because the benefit will outweigh the cost. Please.
When you're doing strategic debt, is it the programmer who's making the decisions or the manager who's making
Oh,
the
it's typically management, right? They're pushing it, right? Look, we're all professionals here. If you're on the development side, even if you're on the management side, you're a professional as well. But if you're on the development side, your goal is to do the best job that you can. You were hired to do professional quality work. Do it. We don't want to cut corners.
So you mentioned naive debt,
Yes.
and you showed a whole bunch of practices,
Yes.
none of which are taught in school.
This one's a management one. The one on the previous slide was a developer level.
Right.
This one's developer level. That one, yeah, this one's developer level. This one's manager level, right? Because I, as your manager, have declared you will give me all these features by that date with these resources. And I'm being naive about what is actually possible.
I guess my question is, do you think, in your experience, has technical debt come from management decisions or developer?
Yes.
Yes.
By the way, you're not implying this, but there's not going to be any finger pointing here. It's a shared responsibility when it goes in, and it will be a shared responsibility when it comes out. So if we're not all bought into it, but that was the whole point behind using the term technical debt. It was supposed to be a metaphor that resonated both with management and with technical people. So we could start to have a common vocabulary for discussing what everyone in this room knows is a huge problem.
It's just that most of what I've seen as technical debt I would describe as messy code, not incomplete features.
Well, I mean, you could argue an incomplete feature has a certain amount of customer debt to it. You know, we didn't put that feature in, and customers really want it.
I totally agree with it. I'm just saying.
Okay, let's go on to what causes messy code. Lack of training, rushing the programmer, still management decisions.
But was agreed shared and take this conversation further?